Where's Tracy? Okay. We're good? Okay, welcome to everyone that's joining us from home. This is a work session of, it's basically a joint work session of Poquoson City Council, and we've welcomed the school board to the table as well. Basically, it's a big partnering time of year as we go through our annual financial plan, which is better known as the budget. It's actually been a relatively, and let's try and keep it this way, but a relatively easy budget year. I think most people, if they've read the paper, it's not very political budget. And we seem to have enough money to do the things that we need to do, which again includes coming up to the schools with 100% of what you've asked for. So with that said, I think what we're going to do tonight while we're all here, we'll hear the overall budget from staff. And then we'll talk about, then we'll have the joint meeting with the school board, and then we will talk about the add and delete list. And when we do that, I guess what we'll do is, Jennifer, if you and Chairman can stay at the table, and we'll bring the other department heads up, just in case they want to take some money to do tennis courts. Remember the tennis courts?
Never near the end of that.
Okay, but if we can divide that off on section 3 when we do the add and delete list. Is that good, Randy?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's go ahead and start. And how would you like to present the budget? You going to do that?
Yes, sir. As council is aware, and school board as well, the budget's actually been out for a couple of weeks, so I hope that you've had an opportunity to see it. And so my comments in sort of setting the stage for the budget are really designed with the people watching us at home and perhaps in the audience in mind. This budget, as it relates to my budget message, is really our first post-recessionary budget, and by that I mean due to the actions of everyone at this table over the last 6 years, we have, as a community, successfully come through the recession, made the difficult choices, made the follow-on choices to get our financial house back in order, made some significant decisions last year. So as we go into FY16, this is sort of the new normal, and it may change a bit one way or the other, but this is essentially what it looks like on the other end of the recession. So in order to do that, one of the things we try to do, Teresa, if you advance it, this budget has no proposed changes in taxes or fees of any kind. This is a live within your means budget, and let's see what that looks like and what that feels like. It is fully consistent with your adopted fiscal management guidelines. For the first time since my arrival, the overall real property reassessment is positive. It's positive on average by less than 0.5%, but it's positive. Our fiscal stability reserve fund remains intact, and there is no new debt associated with the recommended budget. So in essence, it's a living within your means budget. So with that concept in mind, this is what the recommended budget, the highlights of it. First, as you mentioned, Mayor, this budget fully funds the request of the school board for an addition of $140,000 in local funding for schools. That will help provide a 2.5% pay increase for all school employees. The budget also includes an additional 0.5% increase for city employees on top of the 2% pay increase that employees received in January of this year. So both groups of employees are looking at a 2.5% this calendar year. There is one new position recommended in the budget. It is something that the fire chief has talked to you about at your last retreat, and certainly talks to me about every year. Essentially, what the drive is to, over a period of 3 years, add one position to each of the 3 shifts to get us closer to the NFPA standards for staffing. Because of the traditional amount of vacancy savings and turnover that they have in the fire department, it's my view that financially we can fund it within the current allocation due to vacancy savings that we traditionally have within the fire department. So there's no new money associated with it, just a different way to use the allocation. I'm hopeful in future years we'll re-examine that as a continuing funding source, and there may be a time where additional positions we may have to look for new funding. But for the first year, I think we've got it covered. The CIP, we've been able to, because our fiscal position is good, we've been able to continue our practice to put some monies towards capital equipment replacement, specifically a school bus and a police car with this recommendation, and a modest amount of additional consulting support for the engineering department through the TMDL mandates that we're having to deal with. Additionally, there is $250,000 in the budget recommended from anticipated land sale proceeds to go further fund next year's installment of our TMDL requirement. And lastly, as a footnote, but an important one, there's $465,000 in state money in the budget for a combination of street paving and drainage projects. And that is essentially the highlights of the budget. Because we're at that point where there are no dire news and very little extra revenue, we're sort of in that place where it's status quo, but it's status quo with the current taxes and fees with enough money to advance the ball on a few very important priorities.
Okay. Questions of council on that, on the presentation, or questions about the budget in general? None? Kind of vanilla budget, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. All right. The only thing I want to make sure is crystal clear to the folks that are, if you watched Poquoson recently and what we've done to further strengthen our financial position, one of the things that we did was we stood up the basically the fiscal reserve, and I'll call it that. It's basically a reserve fund that basically has about $600,000 or so in that, and that was to offset any kind of unexpected or conditions within the real estate market. This budget touches none of that.
That's correct.
Okay. So we basically still have that, and then the money that you're actually talking about pulling for the one-time projects, which is police car, school bus, and some consulting fees, would just come out of the general fund unappropriated fund balance.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I just want to make sure that everybody understands we didn't have to kick into our rainy day fund at all that we just established. So that's great news. Okay.
If you're ready, we can move on to the school board's presentation.
Yes, that'll be fine.
A couple of salient points coming out of the school's budget, a school board's budget to you. Nothing you haven't seen before, but for the benefit of the folks at home, the adopted budget by the school board is $20.758 million. The school board requested $140,000 in additional local funding to help provide 2.5% compensation increase for all employees. This is a point that is worth reiterating. In order for the school board to be able to do that, they still needed to make some position reductions and other reductions within their budget to account for their loss in state revenue. So there's still belt tightening that the school board is actively going through to deal with the loss in state support for education. And lastly, we talk about this because it's very important and it's always on our mind. I'll jump to the middle of it. In 2006, we had 2,602 students in our school system, and September of this year, 2119, a reduction of 483. You can see, not exclusively, you can see a large measure of where the continuing reduction in state revenue is coming from. Even in a year where they supposedly didn't touch education, if your student population is going down, your revenue continues to go down. And as the council is aware, and so is the school board, both boards have talked, primarily the school board at this point, about a future decision about potentially having to consolidate from 4 schools to 3. This is the kind of trend that will take us to that outcome, which I think that we'd all like to avoid if possible. And we're not quite there yet, but it is on the near-term horizon if the trajectory doesn't change. And with that, I'll defer to the school board and superintendent to correct anything I got wrong or fill in any gaps I may have missed.
I would just like to follow up and say, no, exactly what you have up here comes straight from our budget. And also, I do think we need to continue to watch the enrollment decline that we're seeing. And as you said, if we don't see a change, we're going to be having that discussion about consolidation within the next couple of years. So I thank you to the city manager for including the $140,000 that we did request in your budget.
And correct me if I'm wrong on my numbers, but I believe the projected numbers from the Cooper Center, when they did the population study, the projected numbers are within about 60 students. So it's pretty much in line with their projections as far as the decrease in enrollment over the years. Also, the 2.5% compensation increase for all school personnel. We did request the $140,000, which we were very appreciative that it was included in the budget. That was, the governor, they approved a certain percentage for pay increases. However, again, that's based on the standards of quality, which it was not enough to go around to all the employees that we have. So in order to offset what they offered, in order to give that compensation, that's what the $140,000 was for. It was to offset what the governor had agreed to offer us. So. And again, very, very appreciative of that.
I don't think that's an issue for anybody on council whatsoever. I would like to understand what that meant on the standards. Basically, they did raises based on standards of quality. Exactly how did that work? I mean, did the schools, because we meet all the standards of quality, we get that, as opposed to others who do not? No. I just want the public to understand, you know.
Okay. And the standards of quality basically is not enough personnel to run a school system like it needs to be run. Like we like our school system here in Poquoson to be run. Dr. Parrish, can you give some specifics as far as, for example, principals, assistant principals, guidance counselors, those type positions?
Yeah, the standards of quality drive the staffing in our school divisions, but it is the minimal staffing. So for example, with the standards of quality as they are, we could have 30 students in our kindergarten classrooms. I can't imagine anybody that would want to see that happen. So there's not a school division in the state that staffs on the standards of quality. The raise that the General Assembly and then the governor agreed to was a 1.5% raise for only the numbers of employees included in the standards of quality. So that provided the school division just over $90,000, when in reality, even to do a 1.5% raise for all of our employees, it was over $200,000. So it just shows you that they're just nowhere near fully funding how school divisions are staffing. Even though we've been reducing staff, we're still above the minimum because we just need to be, because we believe to do what's best for students, you can't just adhere to the standards of quality. And as Dr. Carter alluded to, there's also standards in there that still have never been funded. For example, reading specialists being fully funded and some of the assistant principals. So as we've said many times, the state is still failing to fully fund education.
I always like to, I don't know if I don't really mean to point that out, but I want to make sure it's clear to the people at home when we pass budgets that the, quote, standards of quality is not really the quality that you need to produce the education product of any school district. Okay, so like I said, 30-to-1 class ratios, that's a little out of whack from all of our personal knowledge. So that's why I said I just wanted to make sure that we're doing our part. I think we continue to try to do our part. We can't do everything that y'all want, but I will kind of leverage off what Randy said. We've all arrived here at this point, at this budget that we all are going, wow, this was kind of easy. We all arrived here together because of a lot of hard work together. The schools have taken the brunt of the economic downturn. The city has tried to help out where it can. while the schools understood that we couldn't do everything to make you whole. But at the end of the day, where I see the city of Poquoson right now is stronger financially than I can remember in all my years on council, and able to deal with the problems despite the fact that we're coming out of a recession. And my hat is off to all of us, okay, because we work together as a team and because we were able to understand what each other was going through. You know, what the city was up against, and certainly for the council, what the schools were up against. So I think we've arrived here at what is not the most exciting budget conversation I've ever been in, but certainly the best conversation that I've ever been in concerning a school budget, where the decisions we've made in the past have paid off to where we are today. So that doesn't go missed on me. It doesn't go missed on me that Randy, you and Jennifer deserve a lot of the credit for that. The rest of us, we voted, but y'all did the hard job of putting those budgets together, you and your staffs. I shouldn't just say the two of you, because I know your staffs were intimately engaged. So that's really all I have to say about the budget. Anybody else? Y'all want to pile on?
I have a question, if I could,
Okay.
Dr. Parris. I know Cooper's enrollment numbers, their model's been fairly consistent historically, with a little bit of a margin of error. What are they showing for the next few years on the horizon? What's their model look like?
They're still showing, I don't have the exact numbers, I can certainly get them to you, but they're still showing a decrease coming in the coming years for the next 5 years out. So, you know, my hope is there's some opportunity in the near future to turn the tide on that. But they are, as Dr. Carter said, when the consolidation committee met a number of years ago, they said if we get to the Cooper Center projection for 2016, that's when we need to really look at this, and we're 60 students away from that, so they've been on target on that, on those estimates, so.
We're conscious of that one.
Where are the teaching and support positions coming from?
We are actually still working through that as we have staff making decisions about leaving. They're through attrition, so, and also looking at where our kids actually land, because we may have to transfer students. So I can't give you the exact, but I want everybody to understand they're through attrition, so.
Okay.
Jane, one question, and I guess it gets into a little detail, but it kind of fits in with the city budget and the school budget. We've budgeted a new school bus this year, and when we had the conversation about the new school bus, it was my understanding that the state did us a favor and said we had to buy brand new school buses now, because in the past we have bought good condition used buses from areas that may have really long routes, but the routes in Poquoson are shorter, much shorter, and so they have served our needs well in the past. But my understanding was our last conversation about school buses said we can't do that anymore. We have to buy new school buses, and I thought there was going to be some conversation with the state about allowing us the opportunity to continue to do that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I know we had the conversation. You want to handle
Sure.
between you and Jennifer answer
There
that?
actually was legislation that was put in for that, and I don't know what the final result of that was, so we do need to double check on that. But legislation that moved forward through I believe a delegate through
Change
the
the
House
law.
to change it so that it.
And that was through our local delegate, right?
No, it wasn't through our delegate, but I know
Okay.
it came in through the General Assembly. I just
Very
have to
good.
see what the final resolution was.
And I think we all know that there needs to be somewhat of a balance. We don't need to buy a fleet of used buses, but they're good for the local routes, while the longer routes that you've got to travel with are best served by new buses, and we understand that.
Just generally, we don't need Richmond telling us that detail.
Agree.
Right.
Can I add one thing?
Yes, sir.
We're all appreciative of the support that you've given the budget, and I just want to say that we're excited about the possibility of maybe reversing that enrollment trend, and so we won't have to make some hard decisions that Randy alluded to down the road. So thank you all for being proactive in our community and the leadership that you're providing.
Well, we've got with it. Obviously, we're trying to turn that tide within what we can do. Without the city turning that trend does Weldon Cooper ever predict an increase in their projection?
Not for us.
Not for us, yeah, for others. I'm hoping to give them, I'm hoping soon we'll have reason to give them a change
Okay.
for their prediction.
Okay.
A lot of multipliers.
And that may be exactly right. Without housing stock, I'm sure that goes into the calculation, but, so that's good. So I think we can turn this tide. I really do. And, but we're still a good year out. And I really say a good year, maybe two. But I think we've got the right plans in place. Okay. Anything else?
You want to discuss the delete list?
Yeah, let's, if y'all don't mind making some room for the rest of the staff who, we'll see if we can add or delete any of them.
Not the staff.
They might not want to come
Come
forward
on up to
now,
the
Mayor.
table.
They're not gonna come now. You ain't gonna leave me.
All right. Members of council, it's unusual that we do all this in one night, but having not had your previous meeting, we're having to box it all together. But as is common, budgets are fluid, and they represent our best thinking and best estimates on the day we put them together. And normally within 12 hours, something changes, and that's been true my entire career. There are a number of things that would ask you to consider. First, on the revenue side, we have some adjustments that we feel we need to make cumulatively at a negative 8,500 to those three revenue sources based on our updated information and revenue collection, cigarette tax being the one that's falling off. And then with regard to the other side of the ledger, there is an item on your agenda this evening. So the right half of this chart is predicated on you making a decision in favor of the item on your agenda later tonight. If for any reason you do not, then everything we're talking about on the right-hand side, we don't need to worry about that, and we'll need to find $8,500 worth of reductions. But I'm working on the assumption that you will approve that. Council members will recall from reading the package and from the weekly a few weeks ago, this has been a year where we needed to go out and rebid health insurance. And the selection committee looked at a number of bidders and ultimately decided that the market condition was right for us to shift from one type of Anthem program to a different Anthem administered program called Local Choice. The principal difference between the two is that the plan that we've had traditionally, we're independently rated on our own. We're a small pool that's had some pretty significant experience actuarially, and as such, our rates were fairly high. By going into a statewide pool, we were able to not only not see a 9% increase, but to see a decrease of a little more than 9%. So the swing together is about 19%. The plans are not identical, but they are comparable in the opinion of the selection committee. So what you see here is reflected is the savings on the city side of that decision. The employees will also see savings in their rate structure. And we made sure that we adjusted that rate structure so that things like new deductibles, that their rates are going down by more than the deductibles. So it goes down for them, it goes down for us, and we think that it's the right time to no longer be independently rated. So with that as a working premise, there are a few changes that come in late. The animal shelter is one of those. And if you recall from the budget transmittal memo, there were three things I talked about. We had to make more cuts than we wished to in the existing budget to balance it. So you see the items beginning at economic development, events, parks and recreation, pool, facilities, public works, and mosquito control. Those are all things that we cut out of budgets in order to make it balance. So we had a little bit of money, and I worked with Teresa, who worked with the departments. We gave them an opportunity to say, if there's a place where we cut a little bit too close to the bone, tell us what it was. And to the extent that we could, we're recommending putting some of that back. Beyond that, council members will recall from your budget retreat last year, there were 3 things that we talked about with regard to staffing. One was Chief Holloway's need to get, over time, an additional person on each operational shift. The next thing we talked about, the police chief talked about with you, was the need to augment the personnel we have at the detective rank. Being the least violent, lowest crime rate city is not an easy thing. It's a whole lot of hard work by the men and women in blue and also our citizens as well. And the chief can speak to it, but essentially we need some depth and we need some redundancy, and that recommendation here is to do that. The chief does have an unmarked vehicle that could be used, so that's why you don't see an additional vehicle. The next position is a byproduct of many things, but essentially what we've seen is with the new environmental inspection requirements that came out last year, as well as the general uptick in activity, whether it's construction related, like the With Creek Road tree replacement and enhancement project, the new stuff such as the fountains and Drake's Landing that are coming online. What I've determined, and if you know Mark Poquoson, you'll know this too. Mark is fantastic and he can do anything, except he can't be in 2 places at one time. So Public Works and Community Development and Engineering began to work that issue together on how could we address the E&S workload and the greatly expanded by the state environmental workload. And their recommendation was to essentially add an additional inspector. I called it environmental inspector. That may not be a good title, but I was simply trying to differentiate it from the construction inspector, which is Mr. Poquoson's position. Right now, Public Works does construction inspections, and they try to assist wherever possible in the environmental. And because of the workload, that's getting harder and harder to do. So this position is intended to be its partner with a small p. An inspector that works out of engineering and handles the environmental inspections, including the E&S inspections, the stormwater inspections, and the other inspections that the city engineer is responsible for. And the idea is that both inspectors should be fully cross-trained to help the other, so that there's always a bit of redundancy. But we've gotten to the point that one position is just we're just having trouble keeping up, and that's in large measure because the state and federal government keep lumping inspection requirements and particularly environmental requirements on us beyond our ability to absorb it.
That's enough for a full-time position,
Yes, sir.
not a part-time thing?
That's a full-time position at entry level, grade 16, which is the same grade as the construction inspector that's in Public Works. And the vehicle listed is a vehicle for that position because we don't have a spare one.
Well, my question was, we go from what we got all the way to a full position.
Yes,
It's
sir.
not a part-time
No, sir.
opportunity.
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Randy, would it be possible, and environmental inspector, I don't particularly, that doesn't cozy up to me real well. In my 50 years of construction, I've run across a lot of, that's basically a certificate that you get for being able to regurgitate the Virginia Sediment and Erosion Control Book. What I'd like to see us do, and what I think the taxpayer would get more bang for the dollar, is upgrade that position and look for someone with a civil engineering background, or at least some civil engineering, maybe not even a graduate civil engineer, but somebody with a civil engineering experience that could help Ellen, because she's the one that needs, I'm not saying Mark doesn't need help.
I understand.
With the projects going, but could we possibly upgrade that position so it could be both?
Potentially, if I could address that, just in case I wasn't clear in the staff report, this new position is intended to work for the city engineer. And so would provide direct help to the city engineer in that case. Could we do it in some other way?
Well,
Absolutely.
I was just looking at the description of what they were gonna do, and I see no mention of any engineering background.
Understood.
I think it's important, if they're gonna help Ellen, that we insist that they have engineering, either engineering experience or a degree in civil. I'm not saying a PE, we don't need another PE, but I think Ellen definitely needs some help.
Understood. And would you like to respond to this, since this is essentially your recommendation regurgitated here?
Yes, we were specifically looking at inspection, but yes, we do need more engineering staff, and I have to admit, I was hoping to look for somebody who had at least a couple years of engineering courses, at Thomas Nelson, or at least some background. With the new environmental requirements, even for inspection, you need higher level, college level math to do some of those jobs, and the science would definitely help as well. So, yes, I think we could expand the job description a bit if council wants.
I mean, even if we had to up the pay scale a little bit, I think it's important to do that.
Okay. So you'll take Councilman Green's recommendation into when you post the application and see.
Sure.
Other than cheaper car.
That's kind of where I was at, We'll get a cast-off car from one of the other departments and.
Without any conversation to the contrary, we will incorporate that suggestion in exactly what we do. I appreciate it.
Okay.
We were not daring to aim that high.
Okay. What is it, and this is really more of just a question, cigarette tax, the decrease. Why is that?
I think people,
I mean, is that based on returns? I mean, I know that overall that I'm hopeful that people are smoking less. I guess is that based on returns? Because that's pretty steep.
I think this is just an example. If you tax something, you get less of it.
Right.
It's just an economic policy.
Councilman Freeman, that actually, I think, has a little bit to do with it.
Okay.
York County does, in fact, not have a cigarette tax. It actually has declined over the past couple years, and so I would say that it's a combination of that factor, the factor that maybe there's less people smoking, the age of our citizenry. I don't know if that's a factor or not, but we sell our stamps directly to the wholesalers. Mm-hmm. And so we also have one less retailer down here that sells cigarette stamps, sells cigarettes, which was Back River Market. They were a big seller of cigarettes, and so we have one less retailer down here as well. But the numbers are definitely on a decline, and so it's a combination of a lot of those.
So what is the amount? Okay, that's the decrease, right?
Right.
So what is the amount that we're getting in cigarette tax approximately? And you don't have to be to the dollar.
Is it 75,000?
Give me a second.
If we raise it some more, will it go down again? Because I'm hoping that it would, which
It
means
might.
less people would
No, that just
smoke.
means they're buying their cigarettes elsewhere.
Cigarette tax.
90,000?
estimate.
90,000 still, or is it 90 minus the 25?
It's
Yeah.
90 minus the 25.
95,
Okay.
based on that revision.
Okay. And the increase in the franchise tax, I was kind of interested in that one as well.
The franchise tax is actually based on deposits at our local banks. Mm-hmm. And that's very misleading because both of our banks maintain accounts that are not actually associated with Poquoson residents per se. They actually manage accounts at both of our banks from other entities. But it's what that's based on, bank deposits located that are attributable to the city of Poquoson. So,
Okay.
and that number is that's up and down a lot. They change, the banks change their, what they're managing.
Okay.
Often.
But right now, you project that as an increase, and I'm good with that. And DMV Select is just a good news story. That just means that you're becoming more and more successful with that,
We are.
right?
That's true.
Okay. I don't have any other questions for the rest of council. Everybody good with the add delete list? Any hard spots? Okay. All right. That must be a record budget work session. 40 minutes. All right. I think, like I said, it goes back to, we've all arrived at the same place because of the teamwork. And that discussion that I had with the school board should resonate with the department heads that are here as well.
Thank you.
Okay, y'all have done a great job through this recessionary period, and I'm hoping we're at the tail end of this. I think we have one more hurdle to go through in 2016 and 2017 as far as the economy, but let's hope that we come out of this whole, and I'm excited about where we are. So thank y'all. Thank all the department heads for taking care of that.
Thank you.
All right, nothing else, and we'll close the work session. Be back at 7 o'clock for the regular session.